The funny thing is, actually, that you're not. Yeah, see, you're usually not very serious. You're usually. But this is serious business that we.
Well, I think it is a very serious
It
business.
is.
I mean, you know, given what the focus of this exchange is about, it's a serious aspect of what we do.
And by the way, welcome to segment 2, where I just want to, to bring
of the business of acting.
Inside.
Hosted by Brad Lemack.
Ding, ding, ding.
Inside the business of acting.
Hold up the mug. It's supposed to be, yes, thank you. This is a.
And the guest is Henry Polic II.
Yes, we're delighted. I'm delighted, and we're all here delighted to welcome back Henry Polic II, actor, director, acting coach, to segment 2 here at Inside the Business of Acting. And of course, we're Brad Lemack in Los Angeles. Hello, welcome back. Thank you. And what we're here to do, really, I mean, the whole goal of these conversations is to talk about career journeys and turning points and lessons learned along the way in an attempt to empower young actors or actors who've been in the business, kind of trying to figure out, well, what is my next step? So I think that listening to the stories and the journeys of others, you can not learn to follow in their footsteps, but take lessons from their experiences to create your own footprints along the way. So I thank you for this. I mean, you've had an amazing career journey. I mean, born and raised Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania.
Correct.
Went to school in Sarasota.
Actually, Tallahassee, Florida State University. Which had an MFA program that actually really evolved into its full-time down in Sarasota after I left. But my apprenticeship in acting was done in the late 60s, and I was a part of 3 out of the 4 shows that they ran in rep during the summer, for 3 successive summers.
Yeah. Well, and then they do a remarkable job.
It's a great program.
I mean, they really turned out some great actors down there.
Top flight.
So
folk.
you got out of college and then you went into.
I was drafted.
Drafted.
And I had a stint, one of my finest performances as a military policeman.
Our side, right?
I was on our side.
Well,
and hello.
It's worth asking.
Well, it is worth asking. But it was at the height of the Vietnam conflict, and those of us who were trying to circumnavigate the problem by staying in school, but they had disqualified you if you were in getting a degree. And I was actually drafted while I was on a USO tour. I got my notice to report to the induction center.
Really?
When I was in Keflavik, Iceland, which was a delayed en route situation. They gave you, when you did a USO tour, you were allowed to travel to a city that you wanted to go to that was near where you had done your work. And since ours was the North, it was called the Northeast Command, that left us, we were in Greenland, Nova Scotia, and Iceland, and our last stop was Iceland, and so we went to London for 2 weeks.
What was the USO tour? What were you performing?
I was in Little Abner, and I was Hairless Joe and General Bull Moose, because there were 16 of us and we doubled and everything. And we also did a variety show, and I was the MC of that, and / comedian / singer.
So when you talk about career journeys and turning points, it sounds like you had one.
That was huge. That was huge. And when I did get in, I had met a guy that when we were getting processed into Fort Riley, Kansas, who was writing for the paper. And I was telling him about, I had just gotten my MFA in acting, and here I was, a military policeman, and I didn't know how I was going to process all of this. And he wrote a story about me in the Post paper once he got his journalism position at the paper, which caught the attention of my CO. And my CO used it as an opportunity to develop a public relations program whereby military policemen would be seen as something more than, at that time they were considered, lugs who just arrested people and, were good with a gun.
You arrested people and were good with a gun?
Not only that, but our main job was to track down people who were using illicit drugs, who were returnees from Vietnam, because one of the huge problems, this is off the...
Well, no, but that was
off
true.
the-
That was huge. They came back. There was a huge drug addiction.
But I mean to say,
problem.
this is
Yeah.
really off the subject. But all of this was...
But you carried a gun. You arrested people.
I
What
was a
acting?
sharpshooter with every weapon they put in my hand. I'm serious.
No, I know you were, but what
45,
training?
I could blow your leg off with a 45.
Let's
Well,
go to the tape on that, right?
But you know, then you think about that experience and what do I draw from that,
Yeah.
and what it was just building up my treasure trove when I got out here, you know, and I had to handle a gun in a show. So suddenly I knew how to do that because I was trained with that, and you wouldn't think about that, but that's how I used it. And I was one of the fortunate in that I did not have to serve in Vietnam.
Yes.
I did serve in stateside, and then we had a Reforger Command in Germany, in which I learned a great deal about German life and crossing the farmland and going to Bayreuth to see. You know, I was the guy that went to Festspielhaus, which is the Wagnerian
The
opera
what?
house.
The whom?
Festspiel.
Okay.
Festpiel, I believe.
And what happens at one of those places?
It's a Wagner festival.
Okay.
But the
sorry.
Festspielhaus is the opera house that he built.
Okay. Thank you.
So I had all of this information
And you
coming to me
arrested
by
people.
and I arrested people.
And carried a gun.
Then I got out with an early release because at that time everything started to wind down and we were going to pull out of Vietnam.
This was 19. It was
70.
70. What?
1. I got out in 71.
Okay, right.
And I went back home to Miami and got hired by the Players Theater of Miami. I always went back to my theater roots. I did plays. By the way, I had a co-duty ship in the military. So for half of my duty day, I was the general's bodyguard and worked at headquarters. And for the other half of the day, I did plays and acted and directed them.
Who knew Uncle Jerry was rooted in arresting people?
Who knew? But then that's what informed me later on in life and gives me an opportunity to tell the story, but B, also inform me in a way that I would never have gotten had I not had that experience. I don't advise people to get that experience just to learn how to use a gun or a weapon, as we're supposed to call them, because there's that whole thing about this is my weapon, this is my gun, this is for shooting, this is for fun. Hello, nurse. We'll be right back. Digital film at 11.
Thank you.
Because I have to update myself. Because I always say film at 11.
But you make a very valid point, actually. There is a very valid point in there, which is kids coming. This is supposed to be about your journey, but you know, I've often lied about what we're going to talk about.
Okay.
You know, we get to it eventually. But kids coming out, the normal route seems to be the kids come out of college with a degree in acting, and they have an expectation that the career will instantly follow.
Doesn't happen.
But there's not really. It's like living gives you colors of life that you can use in your career that make you better at creating characters and roles and doing what you want to do.
Like when you're in elementary school and you're wondering why you're having to learn the alphabet. You don't know how that's going to come into play until you get into the real world. And the same thing holds true about acting. You don't know how to do half of what you're trying to learn to do until you have some experiential level that will lead you in that direction. The analogy I always use when I'm talking to somebody who's doing a scene where they're going to murder somebody, and they said, but I've never done that. What do I do? And I said, well, actually you have, because there's been that annoying mosquito that you have killed. And so you have to think about what the motivation is. And once you do that translation, once you make that leap, you're so much better off. You draw back. You know, there's a book called Boleslavsky's 6 First Lessons of Acting. And sense memory is a very good thing to draw from, but it doesn't have to be the actual memory of the actual thing that happens, AKA killing somebody, a human being.
Not rooted like in the method acting stuff to recall.
But you just think about what it was that motivated me to kill that mosquito. Because it was annoying and it was going to leave me with a bump. It was going to take my blood. And if you've ever killed a mosquito that has been on you and you see the blood come out of it, it's a horrifying reality. And you look at that and you go, good, I'm glad I got that, you know.
That was actually, do that again?
No, I'm not going to do
Please,
it again.
take
because
it.
I only
But it made a point.
If it does make a point.
You made a point.
Thank you. But I hoped I would. So, you know, what you're talking about is the starter folk, and that's all well and good. But what also is a critical part of my life is maintaining it all, you know, and going in and out of the arcs, of the various arcs that you do go through. There's only one person on the planet that has ever had a career that has been nonstop, and that would be Betty White.
It works all the time.
Works all the time. But that is the exception rather than the rule. And the journeyman actor and the nuts and bolts actor, not everybody's going to become a star. And you do have to make a consideration in your life about why you do it. What feeds this monster or this addiction? Because I always refer to it as an addiction, because if you truly get bitten by this thing, you can't find your way out. You've got to do it. You have to find a way to do it. That's what addiction is. And I was lucky enough to develop myself into a director and a teacher by virtue of watching directors and teachers and absorbing what they did. I also have good communicative skills, which every actor should have. Not everybody can translate that to that, though. It doesn't always guarantee you doing that.
So why do you do it?
I never did it to be rich.
Famous?
I didn't even think about being, maybe when I was a kid I thought about being famous. But when I really got into it and started doing it for a living, it was so fun. And it was so stimulating. When I was doing When Things Are Rotten, a 14, 15-hour day to me was glorious because of what the product ended up being. And it was magical to me that I could be a part of that. And it still is to this day. You know, I did a musical, it'll be 2 years ago this September, Sister
Act, the Pasadena
Yes,
Playhouse.
And I knew when I'm on stage is a time in which there is being alive in a way that I'm not alive in my regular day-to-day activity. Mm-hmm. There's something about that connection with the audience, with the process, with making believe, with the fantasy of it all.
Creativity.
Well, it is creative.
Yeah.
It is very creative, and I think you can't discount how hard it is and how difficult it is. It's not just the fun of it, it's the process of it and putting it together and getting it, and
the journey.
The journey. The journey is the richest part of it. If you do it for what the journey gives you, then you're okay. You also have to realize, you have to embrace the idea that it can't be the only thing that makes you live. And that's where you get involved with people who have a very difficult struggle. You do have to have a full, rounded life.
Balance.
It has to be balanced. You know, we can borrow a lot from the yin and the yang philosophy. There is that, and you have to achieve a balance.
We can also borrow a lot from commercial television. Time to take a break. Well, I'm the yin and the yin and the yanging, you know. Thank you for that. I mean, I think that's perfect. I mean, there's no better way to sort of talk about the actor's journey and empowerment on that journey than exactly the way you've said. So thank you for that.
Empowerment is a good role, because you do have to empower yourself to not, because we are at the vicissitudes of whoever's room we walk into next. And we may not be that person that day, but eventually you will be that person that day.
I want to talk about the audition process, your audition process, in our next segment. You'll stay, right? Because otherwise I'll talk to myself. And then I also want to talk about the actor as director, who is unlike any other director there is, and thank God for
Absolutely.
that. So you'll stay, and we will come back. And by the way, for more information on Mr. Henry Polic II, you can check out his credits also on imdb.com, and links and information for the coaching that Henry does. You can find out some leads to that on the resources page at thebusinessofacting.com. We're going to come back for segment 3. We hope that you will join us then. From Los Angeles,
So
I'm Brad Lemack. Thank you. Yes, I was very serious, but I was just trying to.
It was
the
very
yin and
good.
the yang because you started.
It's like you're
serious.
doing television.
It's like
Yeah.